Good morning. This morning we are looking at Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15 is an amazing chapter in just seeing what happens, and we learn a lot about the first church and a lot about how the church should operate and run. Now let me explain what I mean here. In Acts chapter 15, there are some people and certain men who have come down from Judah, and they've come for the purpose of saying that the Gentiles that have been saved, we're glad that they're saved, but now that they're saved, they have to follow Mosaic law. And there's a conversation, an argument that goes back and forth between people who believed that they needed to follow Mosaic law and those who held to the truth that they were saved by grace and not by the law. And as I begin to have this conversation back and forth, it's obvious that their meeting here in Judah, their meeting here was for the sake of having this conversation. We notice some of the characters that are here. We have here Paul and Barnabas, and we have Peter here. We also have a group of Pharisees that have been saved. There's also James is here. In the middle of this whole conversation, there's lots of other people. Silas is here as well, and Judas is here. But as we read through and look at the people that are involved in this meeting, they've clearly come together to determine and to seek what God would have done for the Gentiles and what God would have them to do moving forward in reaching the Gentiles. And what I find amazing is, in the middle of this debate and this conversation, we run into verse 12. And in verse 12, I'm going to read it real fast. It says, "And when all the multitude kept silence and gave audience to Barnabas and Paul, declaring what miracles and wonders God hath wrought among the Gentiles by them." So as Paul and Barnabas began to talk about what God has done, everyone was silent. What I find amazing and I love about this is their program, their order, their reason for coming together, it all paused at a mention of what the presence of God was doing in the life of the Gentiles. It did not matter what was being said or what was being done. It did not matter what they were requiring the Gentiles to do. It paled in comparison to what the presence of God was doing. This first church, in the middle of this meeting, they paused and they recognized that God's presence is really the guiding factor of whether or not God was in something. And as I begin to think about this, I begin to look at the fact that so often we make decisions. Well, we get focused on a predetermined set of ideas or a predetermined set of action that this is what we're going to do, as opposed to stopping and thinking and seeking what God would have us to do. In our personal lives, we can jump out ahead and say, no, bless God, I'm going to do this and do this and do this and do this, and we build and we make plans. Or as Jesus says in the parables, to build up bigger barns and tear them down. Tear down the barns and build up bigger barns without actually seeking God, without actually seeking His direction and His leadership. You know, as a children of God and a child of God, that shouldn't be that way. So my thought for today is this. Let's never get so busy on our program, so busy on our agenda, so busy on the things that we want to do, that we don't stop and say, God, where are you at in all this? God, where's your presence? Where's your presence seen in all of this? Right now, every news outlet, every media outlet we look at about the world and about what's going on in our society and what's going on in our country, it's terrifying to see. But can I tell you this, as we look at all the program and everything that's going on, the most important question we need to ask is, God, where's your presence? Where's your presence in my life? Where's your presence seen? How am I portraying your working in my life to others around me? So I challenge you today to seek God, to seek to know Him, to seek to hear from Him, to seek His guidance, His help, His direction. Trust in the Lord in all thy heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and I love that next part, and He shall direct thy path. I'm very thankful for all that God has done and the fact that He does direct our path whenever we will stop and be silent and listen to Him. They made a wise choice, and they wrote a letter within a letter in this passage. Paul and Barnabas, they begin their second missionary journeys, but before they go and they begin this journey, Paul and Barnabas split. Interesting study on John Mark is found in the end of this book and just seeing what goes on. For time's sake, we don't have time to develop that, but is God's presence in the middle of our lives? Is He allowed to lead? This evening, we will be meeting at 7 o'clock for Zoom. I look forward to this time of testimony of how God is working and leading in your life. Look forward to this time of testimony and how God's leading you in Acts chapter 15. We'd love to hear how God's challenging you through the reading of His Word in Acts and also your personal devotions. So if you're able to join us, and we'll also share some prayer requests that evening. Thank you so much once again for tuning in and being a part of this morning's devotional thought. We'd love to hear from you. If you're not able to make it to the Zoom meeting, right here on the comment section, you just comment right below there, and then we'd love to hear from you. Lord bless you. Have a wonderful day. We look forward to seeing everyone real soon.